Yes, so the French were helping the Americans to fight off the British from their own lands, and naturally, this was a very expensive adventure, and the French had spent huge amount of money in sponsoring this whole American War of Independence. But for that, you have to understand that money, when you spend money, then you should also have the resources to earn that money. You can't just keep spending and spending, and you have fewer avenues to make that kind of money, right? So, uh, the the Americans were, of course, successful in gaining their independence, which happened before the independence of France. That is the revolution in France. The Americans had their revolution in 1783, and the French had their revolution in 1789. So just about 5-6 years after the American Revolution. But the world in France was. It was a very different world in France, whereby there were three main states in France. States, that is, the French society was divided into three sections. The French society was divided into three sections, where the first section was the king, the aristocracy. The second section was the clergy, that is, the people from the church. And the last section was the common people. Okay, now you have to understand that the common people, like in all the societies, was the major chunk of the population. So even in France, 98% of the people in France at that point in time belonged to the third state, that was the common people, the ordinary people. And it was only the 2% which comprised of the first state, that was the king and the aristocracy, and the second state being the members of the church. Okay, now this situation was a very difficult situation for any country, because you have to understand that this 2% of the population did not pay any taxes. Okay, the richest percent of the population did not pay any tax. The rest 98%, the people who didn't have money, had to pay taxes. And they had to pay taxes to the king, they had to pay taxes to the church, they had to pay taxes to the aristocracy as peasants. So this situation could not be sustained for a while, and for long. I'm sorry. The ruler of France, that is King King Louis XVI, he understood that this situation was a very grim situation, which was draining out the resources and the treasury of France, and he could not continue with this kind of a formula for long. And he did try to introduce reforms, but then the aristocracy, the clergy, would just not allow him to introduce internal reforms. So, but he needed money. So France was almost bankrupt, and he needed money. So what he did was he called a meeting of the State General. That's what the body was known as. He called the meeting of the State General, where he wanted to discuss this issue.